you, Maharaj, inviting us, hosting us.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
This is a book plagiarized from Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's start. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 There are about 8 or 10 pastimes in the 10th canto about Lord Balaram. I'll start with this page 307. So Balaram is always there to fill in the gaps for Krishna in different ways. So this is a visit to Vrindavan. In Dwarka one day, Lord Balaram grew keen to see the many friends he'd known so well throughout his infancy. He called a royal chariot and mounted it alone to journey to Vrindavan, his beloved childhood home. The residents of Dwarka were thoroughly aware the residents of Vraj loved Krishna far beyond compare. They thought, if Krishna stays and Balaram sees them instead, both we and they may live, if they are not already dead. Remember, they had Krishna and Balaram to themselves. Indeed, the pain of separation plagued the cowherd folk. And when Lord Balaram arrived, his joyful parents spoke, O Master of creation, as your foster dad and mother, may we be kept from harm by you and by your younger brother. Lord Balaram gave deep respects to all the senior men and took respects presented by his junior friends and kin. With handshakes, folded palms, embraces, nods, sweet words, and smiles, Lord Balaram met everyone in tasteful, fitting style. Lord Balaram refreshed himself, returned, and sitting down, accepted many questions from the cowherds gathered round. Their voices shaking out of love, they asked about the health of Krishna and the Yadus and of Balaram himself. Quote, by fortune, Kamsa died along with other enemies, and Krishna built our relatives a fortress in the sea. Dear Balaram, are all the Yadus doing well again? Do some of you discuss and think about us now and then? The gopis asked Lord Balaram with suitable respect, is Krishna happy with the city girls, as we suspect? Does he recall his father and his mother? Will he come? Does he recall us gopis and the service we have done? For Krishna we abandon every person we held dear. And how does he reciprocate? He simply disappears. How do these learned city women give him so much trust? No doubt his words enchant them and his smiles arouse their lust. Why don't we change the subject? Please do not bring up his name. If he can live without us, let us simply do the same. Remembering his laughter, his embraces, and his eyes, the gopis thought of Krishna and gave in to mournful cries. An expert in conciliation, Balaram replied, I have some confidential news for you that Krishna has supplied. As Balaram repeated all his brother's secret words, the gopis felt relief and comfort, pleased with what they heard. Does anyone know what he told them? Gave them the same message that Uddhava gave them earlier. Krishna's everywhere. I'm everywhere. How can we be separate? So they bought it then, and they bought it this time, but they didn't buy it at Kurukshetra. As weeks went by, the people of Vrindavan felt restored. Lord Balaram went out at night, as Krishna had before. He danced with certain gopis who, at that time, were too young to come for Krishna's rasa dance and join the moonlit fun. Caressed by fragrant breezes, with his girlfriends left and right, Lord Balaram enjoyed the Jamuna those pleasant nights. The god Varuna sent a drink that flowed from honeyed trees, a heavenly, intoxicating brew called Varuni. That aromatic beverage perfumed the nighttime sky, attracting Balaram and his companions to imbibe. Gandharvas sang, and Balaram appeared to be the great Airavata, the elephant, surrounded by his mates. The gods played kettle drums and showered flowers in their glee. The sages prayed Lord Balaram's divine heroic deeds. As Balaram and many girlfriends took their forest stroll, the Varuni appeared to make his eyes begin to roll. Intoxicated with delight, adorned with forest lays, Lord Balaram felt beads of sweat like snowflakes on his face. He called the Jamuna to come and cool his entourage, but Jamuna, who thought him drunk, refused to even budge. Enraged, Lord Balaram brought forth his famous fearsome plow and said, "If you don't come, I'll redirect you here right now. You disregard my order and move only at your whim. My plow shall make 100 streams of you. Shall I begin?" The frightened river goddess who appeared and bowed her head was simply an expansion of the one that Krishna wears. With trembling voice, the Jamuna said, "Ram, please hear me first. I didn't understand that you sustain the universe. Release me from your mighty plow, O greatest of the great. Not knowing your position, I did not cooperate. I come before you humbled. Now accept me, if you please, as one of your surrendered and committed devotees." Releasing Jamuna, with all his gopi friends in tow, the elephant-like Balaram stepped in her crystal flow. He splashed his girlfriends, they splashed back, and when their play was through, the goddess Lakshmi gave him gems and silks of ocean blue. Adorned with silks and jewelry and fragrant sandal paste, resplendent Balaram observed the channels he had placed in Jamuna when he refused to let her keep away. A visitor can see those channels to this very day. For 60 evenings, Balaram enjoyed Vrindavan's mood, as well as the exquisite charm the gopis all exude. Their constant fun together filled his mind with great delight. To Balaram, those 60 evenings passed as if one night. Here's Krishna as the envoy Balaram is the envoy for Krishna, trying to pacify the residents of Vrindavan. Mars, do you have any?
No, it's beautiful. You read some more.
Page 313. This is the Dvidvida. A servant of Lord Ramachandra, Dvidvida by name, fell in with Bhaumasura and was thoroughly defamed. This hairy ape, upset by Bhauma's death, ransacked the land, destroying homes and villages completely out of hand. He tore up mountains, using them to slaughter peaceful towns. He churned the sea so mightily that coastal people drowned. He spoiled sacred rites when he passed urine, gas, and stool, and shut up helpless people in dark caves. He was that cruel. One day, Dvidvida, primed for rape and other violent ills, heard sweet, attractive singing in the Raivataka hills. He came upon Lord Balaram, absorbed in luscious play with lovely gopis drinking Varuni from pots of clay. Lord Balaram wore lotuses on every handsome limb, with drinks and songs and rolling eyes and gopis circling him. The mischievous Dvidvida scrambled up a nearby tree and sounded out "Kila, Kila" in vulgar mockery. The gopis started giggling at the impudent display, for as young girls they tended to behave in silly ways. Without regard for Balaram, the ape displayed his teeth. He then turned round, bent over, and displayed his underneath. Disgusted, Balaram picked up a rock and let it fly. The crafty ape avoided it and, in a rude reply, picked up the pot of Varuni and smashed it to the ground. He pulled the gopis' clothing and produced offensive sounds. Lord Balaram despised these acts. He also understood dispatching of this wicked ape would do the planet good. But as the Lord picked up his club, Dvidvida broke a tree and brought it down on Balaram with great dexterity. Lord Balaram stood motionless despite the heavy blow, and struck Dvidvida's skull so hard that blood began to flow. Dvidvida snapped another tree and stripped it with his arms, but Balaram just splintered it, again avoiding harm. The scene went on again and yet again, till all around the forest had grown treeless, so they fought on naked ground. The angry ape released a rain of rocks on Balaram, who smashed each one to pebbles, with his club remaining calm. The furious Dvidvida chose to foolishly persist by beating Balaram directly with his primate fists. Disposing of his club, Lord Balaram employed his hand to strike a single crushing blow the ape could not withstand. The Dvita crumpled to a heap and bid his life farewell. An earthquake wobbled Rivataka mountain as he fell. Lord Balaram returned to home as people sang with love. The earth rejoiced as did the sages, saints, and gods above. Any comments? You read more?
More.
There's one particularly amazing pastime. You remember what happened? Anyone remember what happened when Krishna kidnapped Rukmini? So Rukmini's brother chased after him, and then Krishna defeated him and was about to kill him, and then Balaram showed up. What did he say?
Shave his head or something.
What he said was, "You're going to kill your bride's brother. You really think this is a great way to start your marriage?" So then he chastised Krishna and he apologized to Rukmini, and then Krishna just cut his hair in a funny way. Yeah, so he stood up for Rukmini at this time. But later on, this is page 291. Each one of, let's see, 292 actually. Yes, Lord Krishna had a grandson, and Rukmini had a grandson, Aniruddha. King Rukmini's daughter's son by Krishna's eldest son, Pradyumna. In other words, their son married Rukmini's daughter and had this son. Why did, you ask, Rukmini allow his hated rival's son to wed his daughter? Listen, I'll explain why this was done. The daughter, named Rukmavati, was sought by many men. Her secret choice, Pradyumna, though, defeated all of them. Rukmini gave his approval, though reluctantly, because his love for Rukmini surpassed his hate for his in-laws. The couple wed and celebrated in Rukmini's domain. Obliged by etiquette, both Balaram and Krishna came. Rukmini's puffed-up associates gave him this bad advice. Why not embarrass Balaram by beating him at dice? The match began with wagers of 10,000 coins of gold. Rukmini prevailed, and all his wicked friends could not withhold their pleasure seeing Balaram subjected to this grief. Kalinga's king laughed loud and hard, exposing all his teeth. Rukmini then bet 100,000 coins to up the fun. Lord Balaram accepted, and this time his numbers won. Rukmini, however, cheated. He picked up the dice and cried, "Aha, I've won again. Good luck is surely on my side." Lord Balaram was trembling like a sea on full moon day. He bet 100 million coins and dared Rukmini to play. When Balaram again prevailed, Rukmini stood up and screamed, "I won! Let all these witnesses confirm what they have seen." The big lie. The witnesses, Rukmini's dishonest friends, of course, all lied. Then, suddenly, an unembodied voice rang through the sky. Rukmini has lied, for Balaram has fairly won this match. Though destiny was calling him, Rukmini was too attached. Rukmini ignored the voice. He laughed at Balaram and said, "You forest people can't play dice. Go tend your cows instead. The sports of dice and archery and other things we do are meant for kings like us and not for cowherds such as you." Insulted and defrauded by Rukmini, Lord Balaram, provoked enough to set aside his usual aplomb, surrounded by the wedding guests in festive moods of love, struck dead the thieving Rukmini with his swift, unerring club. Rukmini's companions, warriors all, abruptly lost their nerve and fled in all directions when they saw what had occurred. Lord Balaram's ferocious club left them in bloody grief. Kalinga's king, the one who laughed, was struck and lost his teeth. Lord Krishna neither cheered nor raged at Balaram's assault. He knew Rukmini loved Rukmini despite his many faults. The Lord had bonds of love with both he did not want to risk, so he observed, without a word, his face expressionless. Lord Balaram sat Aniruddha and Rukmavati aboard a fine new chariot. Lord Krishna's family did not lament as they all went to Dwarka, their home, for malice to their Lord was all Rukmini had ever shown.
Right. Beautiful.
The same person he defended, then he killed. Any reflections on Raj?
No. I think your pranam mantra is very appropriate.
Thank you very much. There's one or two more. Is that right? Okay.
What page?
This is page 349. Balaram's pilgrimage. Another fatality. Lord Krishna vanquished every brute who put the earth in pain, except for some Lord Balaram was destined to contain. At this time, though, Lord Balaram was touring holy sites for Yudhisthira and Duryodhana, his friends, were set to fight. Instead of taking sides when his two cousins were at odds, Lord Balaram held rites to honor ancestors and gods. He went to holy tirthas, rivers, temples, and at last Naimisharanya forest, where the sages had amassed. The sages recognized the Lord and stopped their sacrifice to stand and bow, a greeting that is proper and concise. However, Romaharshana, infected with conceit, ignored the Lord remaining in his elevated seat. Lord Balaram was outraged. Romaharshana, you see, possessed of all assembled the most common pedigree. Not only was he scornful by remaining in his seat, his sitting place was higher than the sages, saints, and priests. Lord Balaram said, "Due to lower birth and swollen head, this fool dishonors others. Such a leader should be dead. He may read many scriptures, but his character is such that all he's learned is in his head. His heart remains untouched. My mission is relieving earth of sinful hypocrites, pretending to be pious while refusing to submit to Brahmins, God, or any other person, great or small. A cheater such as this is the most sinful fool of all." Despite the fact that Balaram was finished taking lives, the time for Romaharshana's demise had now arrived. So Balaram just touched him with a single blade of grass, and Romaharshana fell down in terminal collapse. The sages cried, "Alas, alas, O Balaram, our Lord, your killing of this person is exceedingly untoward. We honored Romaharshana by giving him this seat and promised him protection till our yajna is complete. Unknowingly you killed the Brahmin we chose to anoint. Though we fault you for nothing, Lord, please hear our simple point. No scripture binds you. You are God himself, we understand. And yet, if you atone for this, you'd help the common man." Lord Balaram replied, "Of course, I'll gladly make amends. Prescribe for me whatever rite the scripture recommends. Just say the word and you'll see Romaharshana revive, fulfilling your assurances that he would live and thrive." The sages spoke among themselves and answered as if one. "O Lord, your act should stay intact. Let nothing be undone." The Lord replied, "The Vedas teach that one takes birth again as one's own son, so let this Brahman's son fill in for him." The son, Sutta Goswami, was at once installed to sit and lead the sacrifice with all his father's benefits. But Balaram requested, "Sages, tell me your desire. It still appears atonement of some kind should be required." The sages said, "A demon named Balvala is so cruel, he spoils our sacrifice by throwing urine, pus, and stool. Please kill that sinful demon. Then throughout the coming year, remain on pilgrimage, thus your renown shall persevere." Before too long a wind arose, infused with noxious smells. Balvala showered pus and stool by use of mystic spells. He then appeared in person with a trident in his hand, intent on driving holy sacrifices from the land. Balvala looked exactly like a hill of carbon black. His molten copper beard and topknot glowed as he attacked. Lord Balaram observed his horrid fangs and furrowed brow, and called at once upon his fearsome club and demon-crushing plow. His plow tip snigged Balvala as he flew across the sky. Lord Balaram then smashed his club between the demon's eyes. His forehead cracked and gushing blood, Balvala looked just like a crimson mountain crashing down, assailed by lightning strikes. The sages blessed Lord Balaram and praised his strength and skill. They bathed him as the gods bathed Indra when Vritta was killed. They next presented garlands of unfading blooms and leaves, as well as first-rate silken clothing set with jewelry. The sages then gave Balaram permission to depart. His pilgrimage began without the aid of horse or cart. Took him by foot to India's most sacred, holy sites. At every stop the Lord took bath and honored every rite. He traveled so extensively that months and months went past. Concluding his atonement, Balaram was told at last that nearly every soldier in the Kuru's civil war had died at Kurukshetra and would burden earth no more. Since Duryodhana, who Balaram supported, had survived, the Lord went on to Kurukshetra, bent on saving lives. He found the sons of Pandu had as well survived the war. They offered him obeisances, but then said nothing more. At that time, Duryodhana and Bhima, fighting with their clubs, were settling the conflict with each other's flesh and blood. Though Balaram trained Duryodhana, he wanted neither dead. Attempting to break up the closing fight, he stood and said, "You two are nearly equals in your bludgeon fighting skill. Since one has strength and one technique, why get each other killed? I do not see how either of you stand to win this test. So why not put your clubs down now and stop at my request?" When Duryodhana and Bhima couldn't set aside their hate, Lord Balaram saw Krishna had some reason for their fate. Since neither was agreeable to let the other live, the Lord went on to Dwarka to visit relatives. Returning to Naimisharanya, Balaram declared to all the saints and sages holding sacrifices there that he would join their sacrifice. What's more, he told his friends, my long career of warfare has at last come to an end. Lord Balaram blessed everyone assembled in that place with spiritual perception that transcended time and space. They saw Lord Balaram pervading everything, and then they saw Lord Balaram holding the universe within. According to the Vedic rites, Lord Balaram took part in rituals a common man would use to cleanse his heart. Encircled by his family and closest friends that day, he looked as splendid as the moon surrounded by its rays. Lord Balaram's deluding powers make the common man think he is common too, and this exactly suits his plan. Yet one who simply hears of Balaram's divine pursuits becomes adored by Krishna, whose response is absolute.
Oh.
That's a question. Saying that Duryodhana was favored so much by Lord Balaram, like he wanted to give Subhadra in marriage to Balaram, and then he taught him some warfare also. But despite being favored, his heart did not change. So what can we learn? Like certain things to learn from that. Like why did that happen?
Right, because Duryodhana represents all the souls rebellious against Krishna. And Balaram is dealing with them. So Krishna doesn't neglect anyone, he just assigns Balaram to deal with people like that. Is that?
But his like it still did not change. Like it's still up to the individual soul to take up the process.
That's right, Krishna never abandons even rebellious souls. Is that all right, Balaram?
Yeah, I mean, every living entity has free will, and they can either use it in the right way or misuse it. And Duryodhana had every opportunity to use his free will properly, but he chose not to.
So even if the spiritual master is like very compassionate to a living entity, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will change the person's heart. Like that person has to want to do, like, take up spiritual life himself.
Yeah.
That's what we saying, born in but not bought in. You know, be born in devotee families, but we still have to buy in.
Yeah. Like Zelnius Petridis, someone said they're born into the Hare Krishna movement, but they still have to decide to join the Hare Krishna movement.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for the wonderful poetry. I had one question about like Balaram. Like I think like the exact word you used, like he appeared intoxicated. So it indicates that he wasn't actually intoxicated, but he definitely was. Is that like Yoga Maya Shakti or like? Yeah, could you like clarify that? I think it's like I don't exactly know how to like perceive with it, or if it's something that I should try perceiving, or is it just like something I should accept as inconceivable and move on?
He was intoxicated, but transcendentally intoxicated, which is not to be compared to ordinary people getting intoxicated. So the Yamuna misunderstood his being intoxicated and disrespected him. And then he threatened her, and then she came to her senses.
He was not overcome, in other words, by he was out of control.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
But again, this is the example of how Balaram compliments Krishna. We never see Krishna with this particular disposition, but Balaram. Krishna is the taste of water, and as one of our friends said in Gainesville the other day, that we want to stay hydrated forever. Because Krishna's the taste of water. Anyway.
I just thought of a little anecdote that took place with Srila Prabhupada at the Arga Kumbh Mela in 1971. So there was a sort of dispute between Madhavisa Prabhu and Yamuna Devi. And Madhavisa Prabhu said that Krishna and Balaram are the same. The only difference is that Krishna is blackish and Balaram is white. And Yamuna said that, but there's another difference because Krishna is the only enjoyer of Srimati Radharani. So Tamal Krishna Goswami brought the controversy to Srila Prabhupada. And he said that, Madhavisa says that Krishna and Balaram are the same. The only difference is that Krishna is black and Balaram is white. And Prabhupada said, he's right. And then Tamal Krishna said, but Yamuna says that there's another difference because Krishna is the only enjoyer of Srimati Radharani. And Srila Prabhupada said, she's right. And Tamal Krishna Goswami said, well, they're both saying different things. They both can't be right. And Srila Prabhupada said, you're right. And he said, so, which is right? And Prabhupada said, you decide.
Heard another story about Prabhupada being asked who is stronger, Krishna or Balaram.
Yeah.
And he said Balaram is holding the entire creation, and Balaram is resting on Krishna.
Oh.
Any other?
It's
You wanted to say something, no?
I just had a question. Like the past time that we read, like I've never had this dog song. Like when he was an associate of Lord Ramchandra and he had such good fortune, how could he like fall down and do such abominable acts? How come that happened?
Bad association. Involvement Surah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, like, what can we learn from that?
Keep good association.
Well, Balaram is the first expansion of Krishna, but Shiraji Radharani, where she come from?
Did she come before Balaram or?
Yeah, I mean she's different energy, but I mean not different energy, but feminine energy. But I'm a little confused now as to put it together.
Well, Krishna expands on two sides. One is Vishnu Tattva, like his personal expansion, and the other is Shakti Tattva, his energy. So Balaram is the first expansion of Vishnu Tattva, and Srimati Radharani is the first expansion of Shakti Tattva.
But so Vishnu Tattva is his internal energy, and Shakti Tattva is also internal, right?
Yeah, internal in the sense of spiritual.
Right.
But the Vishnu Tattva technically aren't the energy, but they're the energetic.
And that's okay.
Shakti and Shakti.
So like sun and sunlight, like sun and sunlight,
Yeah.
energy, energetic.
Yeah, I was thinking of like how from Balaram's pastime that Rukmi, he was like first in favor of him, then even to Duryodhan he was in favor. So and Nityananda Prabhu also in favor of Jagai Madai. So how soft, like they appear very hard, like from outside, but internally they are so soft that they oversee so many bad qualities. They don't even like I mean, he doesn't see such bad qualities, but when they cross the line, at least in case of Balaram, then he changes. Okay, enough.
Yes, that happens in various pastimes, like with Lakshmana, who's kidnapped. Lakshmana and what was his name?
Surpanakha was it?
No, the son, one of the Yadu's sons was in love with Lakshmana, who was the daughter of Yadu. Samba. And so the Kurus captured Samba and held him hostage. And so Balaram went out to negotiate a settlement. Because the Yadus were ready, we're going to just attack. And said, let's see if we can work this out. So he went and negotiated, and they insulted him. And who are these Yadus to tell us? We gave them their kingdom, they wouldn't be anything without us. Now they want to put the shoes on the head like a crown. So when that happened, Balaram changed his tactics. And he started to drag the whole city of Hastinapura into the Jamuna. So then they became very cooperative. So yes, he's like that. He's always trying to mediate, but he also has his limit.
But in case of Nityananda Prabhu, he was no limits. Was that the case?
Yes, that's true.
There are no limit. Yeah, there was a incident, well, maybe a series of incidents in Bombay, but Srila Prabhupada received a phone call from the temple president in Calcutta saying that one of Srila Prabhupada's earliest disciples was smoking ganja. And Srila Prabhupada said, tell him that if he doesn't stop smoking ganja, I will reject him. And afterwards, Tamal Krishna Goswami said, is it true that if he doesn't stop smoking ganja, you'll reject him? And Srila Prabhupada said, no. The mercy of Lord Nityananda has you could say fell into bad company, and he was staying on Juhu Beach, and he was doing these yogic tricks, like, I don't know, putting a coin in someplace to get money. And Tamal Krishna Goswami said, this is happening, and he's known as a disciple of yours and as a member of ISKCON, and he's giving you and ISKCON a bad name. So you should reject him. And Srila Prabhupada replied, I cannot reject anyone. And Tamal Krishna Goswami said, well, don't you have to draw the line somewhere? And Srila Prabhupada said again, the mercy of Lord Nityananda has no limit.
Well, excuse me, Brahmatirtha Prabhu tells a story about Nitai, Srila Prabhupada's former Sanskrit editor.
Yeah.
And he had come to Prabhupada and asked for blessings to take initiation from Babaji and Anakut. Prabhupada was not happy with that, and he sent him away. And he was known as the only disciple Prabhupada had rejected. Then Brahmatirtha tells it, the next day he sent Brahmatirtha to try to find Nitai. And he found him at the railway station. He said, please come back, I'll forget it. But Nitai refused to come.
Wow.
The Lakshmana incident was before the war of Kurukshetra.
Yes.
So you said Balaram goes on pilgrimage, right, when the Kurukshetra war happens. So Krishna and Balaram, they know they are the lords. So what are they teaching us by going to pilgrimage? So is that like we also have to go to pilgrimage, or what's the point there? So they are supreme, but they are also going to different places to perform.
Right. In Gita, Krishna says that he performs his duties even though he's not obliged to, because if he didn't, then nobody would work. Nobody would do theirs. Remember that Balaram was upset that Krishna was being diplomatic about taking part in the battle. Balaram just wanted him to do nothing. And he said, okay, yeah, I won't fight, I promise. I'll just drive a chariot. Balaram was not pleased with that. That was also a reason he didn't want to be involved. He just wanted to go out. He knew that Krishna was going to deal with Duryodhana and his company. And so he just did not want to be present. But all of this was happening by Krishna's arrangement. And the final analysis on words, Krishna will side with his devotee. Even though Balaram and Lord Nityananda's mercy for the non-devotees has no limit. But Krishna, like he says, Samoham Sarvabhuteshu, I'm equal to everyone, but to one wants to be my friend, I'm a friend of you. So in that way, he's equal to everyone, however we want to approach.
Like some people who are not devotees, they question sometimes that according to the war of Kurukshetra, that means Krishna always takes side and something like that. Like how to answer, how to explain them that.
People wanted nothing to do with God, and God obliged. The people are inimical towards God, God is not going to impose himself upon them. But if people want to be connected with God, he will fulfill their desire also. Niyatamam prapadinte, as they surrender to me, I reward them accordingly. So he is very flexible according to the desires that we have. Mostly people just don't want to bother with God, so God doesn't bother with them. Krishna is So the real question is, what is this person who's asking the question, what is their attitude towards God? And, is he reciprocating accordingly? And do you expect something else? You want another kind of reciprocation, then you have to give something to the relationship. So Arjuna was giving, Duryodhana was not. Arjuna was Dharma Kshetra, he was there for Dharma, and Duryodhana was Kurukshetra, he was there for the family wealth and prestige. Anything else?
Well, Krishna Jivana, you wanted to discuss your future direction. I'm not suggesting now.
Oh, tell us, it's very interesting.
No, but, so you wanted to discuss with me, but would you like your husband to be present? Would you like Kalakanta